Hello, everyone, and welcome to the space. William, I did send you a speaker invite. So if you could just accept that, then you'll be our guest speaker. Um, I see you've joined the space. So, all right. Um, hmm, you're not connecting for me for some reason. How Let me try that again. Spaces have been very glitchy. Do you see that speaker invite? Otherwise, you can request to speak. I think, William, is this your first space? Because you can go to the microphone down in the corner. And if you hit that microphone, it says request to speak. And then I will bring you up as as the speaker. Can you even hear me? Thumbs up. Blue and Christopher. Welcome to the space. My co-hosts, can you hear me, guys?
Can hear you fine. Yes.
Okay.
Coming in loud and clear.
Okay, very good. How are you this evening, Christopher?
I'm I'm good. You know,
Good.
it's I actually was just reading something about this about a Trump rally in Arizona and some folks getting sick, and I was like a little caught off guard by that. So, but I'm excited for this space. I love non-political spaces. I love spaces about all kinds of other things, and this is going to be exciting.
Sorry, guys. I'm in the back channels trying to get William in here. Blue, how are you this evening?
Oh, I've kind of had a crazy last few days. So yeah, while you get him up, I can kind of talk a little bit about that if you want.
Actually, Blue, I would really love for you to talk about that. And the reason why I would like you to talk about that is because of the topic of this space. So go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna let y'all in, and I mean this has been my life the last few days. So, some people may read my post most of the time, but not every day. But I've had some weird, strange things happening. One thing is I've never seen a large, giant centipede, but I did see one in front of my house, maybe about a week and a half ago, and that was just really strange because it was as big as like a small snake. It was not, and those things really kind of freaked me out. But then this past Friday the 13th, about 9 o'clock at night, there's a snake crawling through my house. And it's not like by a door, like he just came in. He's in a right as you go into the hallway. So he had to travel from some door, which is kind of a distance from him. And all of a sudden he's just there. Well, someone's like, "Hey, you're trying to prank me," because that's kind of the kind of thing that we would do. And I'm like, "No, nobody pranked you. That's not my fake snake. That's not fake." I'm like, "Hang on, I'll be right there." And sure enough, there's a rat snake there, and we took him, put him outside. Anyway, then it was the night before last. My daughter was coming home and opened the garage, and the door that goes into the house from the garage, there's a tarantula over the door. And yeah, that's mating season. It's just, but we've never had these things like around our house. Well, we I've seen snakes, but they've always been outside and beyond the yard kind of thing. So then yesterday, my daughter, I homeschool her, and she comes around the corner, the same corner where we found the snake, and she's like, "Mom, there's mom," and all I can hear is like the mom part, and she's like, "There's a tarantula on the ceiling." So we've had some weird things happening. And so the crazy thing is it felt definitely very odd and weird. And so I called my sister. I'll just go ahead and get to the short part of it, because I have a sister that's not talking to me right now. We haven't spoken in a while. Anyway, we had issues, and anyway, she's living near my other sister now. So I just I was just like, this is the only place my mind kept going was. So I called my sister and I'm like, hey, is she still involved with that hoodoo voodoo stuff, like from New Orleans, because that's kind of the thing that she was kind of into before when she was down here. And she goes, I can't believe you just called me and asked me that. And she says, yeah, because she was helping her move last weekend. She's having hard times. So anyway, so she's like, yeah, I found the hoodoo spell books and stuff when she was packing her up. She said she, packed up these boxes and put them to the side. And she said it was so weird. She said on top of the box that she hadn't taped up, there were these books, and she goes, she didn't pack those books. She don't even know, she's like looking around like, who put those there, kind of thing. And she's like, it was kind of like, she's very religious. So she's like, he's kind of got like God was putting them there for me to see. So she's like, I took them, and she ended up throwing them away. But so she goes home and talks to her husband and tells her husband, I found these books. And he goes, well, I found the dolls the other day, the voodoo dolls or whatever they are. And so through all these conversations, we've connected some things that she's probably, been into the dark magic stuff or whatever. And, I don't know, but, seeing all these things combined and putting it all together. So it's just been kind of a crazy last few days and things, just thinking of all these,
Okay,
we're all, uh-huh.
Blue. Now let me ask you, who helped you out with your little situation?
Oh, heck yeah, Dori did. I am not gonna lie. She's offered me some very excellent advice. And she's like, um, just look and see if there's anything that
Okay,
she's given
Blue,
you.
hold up
Hmm.
a minute. Hold up. William,
I made it.
you did. Yes. I'm sorry, Blue. You know what we're going to do? Let me welcome William, and we'll get back to your story because it is very good
Oh no,
and
this
it
is
is
this is
so real.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
yeah,
perfect.
she's buffering time for us, which is absolutely perfect. All right, William Ramsey, welcome to the space.
Thanks for
William,
having me.
yeah. Is this your first space?
It's my first space as a speaker, not as a listener.
Listener.
Yes,
Okay, excellent. Because 13 over a little over 13 years ago, I think that my podcast Doors of Deception, I think that I was one of the first people to interview you when you wrote Prophet of Evil. Is that right?
yes, that's correct. That's hard to believe. It's been 13 years, but yeah, that was 13 years ago.
It is hard to believe, but you have had compelling research. You research everything so perfectly, and I've read your books. Obviously, I have your books. Haven't gotten them signed yet, but I'm working on that. Anyway,
It can happen.
so great. So William has written about Aleister Crowley and pretty extensively. He's also written about the West Memphis Three and the Smiley Face Killers, and his documentary on the Smiley Face Killers is excellent. He also wrote a book called Global Death Cults, and his most recent book is called Smiley Face Killers. Is that right, William?
That's correct. Yeah, I just put out kind of a second edition. I fixed some of the editorial stuff and added another 50 pages because so much is going on.
Okay. Speaking of so much going on, will you tell us a little bit about the Smiley Face Killers? Because I don't know if everyone in here knows about that.
Well, it got its name. It's associated with the series of a typical type of crime, which is young men going out at night, disappearing to later be found in the body of water. And it was given this name, the Smiley Face Killers, because two of the original investigators, Gilbertson and Gannon, associated this kind of symbol with the finding of the bodies, where they think the bodies were either put in water or where they were found. So it kind of just got its name, and it stuck as this kind of like appellation, I guess, like you would call, like a Black Widow serial killer or something like that. So it is this kind of pattern that's really increased and expanded since the original cases that were reported. One of the original cases was a guy in New York City, in downtown Manhattan. His name was Patrick McNeil. That was 1997. But it's just been unfolding. There's been ongoing deaths. And in my most recent book, I actually have a list at the very end, an appendix of 375 names of young men who fit this same pattern of disappearing late at night, later to be found in water. So it's really, I think, one of the more, if not the most important true crime story of the 21st century that isn't covered by the mainstream media.
I think you're absolutely right. Now, didn't I don't know, the ID channel or some channel like that put out a 6-part series a while ago? It wasn't great.
Yeah, I think it had some shortcomings. It was on Oxygen, and it had the original investigators with a couple extra guys on there. So it had Gilbertson, Gannon, Duarte, and one of their friends whose name I can't remember right now. But I cover a chapter of that investigation in my book. But the problem I had with it is they only looked at 6 cases. So and I think it's a fault of the producers not having the kind of looking into this phenomenon in any depth, because they could have told a much more important story to show that it's happening all over the place and it's concurrently happening. Like they've had these flare-ups of these types of deaths in Chicago, Austin, Texas, which used to not have any of these types of deaths. And they had a huge one that hit the international news in where was it? It was in not Memphis, but it was in Nashville. His name was Riley Strain, and that was a big case, but very similar kind of MO to all these other cases.
Right. So now every time I see a handsome, fit, because that's kind of the profile, college age young man who disappears after being in a bar or leaving a bar, I always think, are they going to find his body in water?
Yeah, me too. Because it happens with frequently. I used to think that this phenomenon was an urban myth, so I would put it in the same kind of, in my mind, in the same kind of group as Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster, until I followed one case in 2016 from the disappearance to being found in water 19 days later. His name was Joey LaBute out of Columbus, Ohio. So that's really when it clicked for me, like, oh, wow, this just happened. And then I just followed more and more cases. Like now it's kind of sad and depressing, because I probably followed 40 or 50 cases like that, where like when the MO hits, I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be found in water. So it's happening with great frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. And so some of your conclusions, and I would love for you to, we have this little down in the right hand corner of the screen, there's a little purple Nexium pill, the purple pill, we call it. I would love it if you could post your links down there, and then we'll get them up into the what we call the Jumbotron up there, because I really want people to be able to find your work, because I find your body of work to be very compelling and very good and very thorough. And I know that I know you have a couple, but I've watched the first one. I haven't gotten to the second one, and I apologize. But your first documentary about the Smiley Face Killers is absolutely phenomenal. Your attention to
Thanks.
detail. Yep, when they disappeared, how many days, and I had a whole notebook trying to, like, everybody tries to find a pattern, right? Is it the full moon? Is
Right.
it satanic holidays? So talk a little bit more about that.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because one of the new chapters that I put in my book, which you can find on my website or Amazon, I called the what was it? It was the brutal lunar solar murder spree, because it seems like when the solar eclipse happened, there were a series, maybe 20 cases of these happening: Texas, Nashville, Chicago. So it was really kind of a strange tie-in to this important event that took place in the stars, right? So I think there is a correlation. At least in 2024, there's definitely a correlation. Other people have tried this, the moon and the times, but there's definitely seasons and like abductions that happen on Halloween. A lot of abductions have happened during that holiday, and Christmas and New Year's Eve, and leaving. A lot of these people are leaving busy venues or music shows or something like that. So there is a correlation between that. All these cases, by the way, also happened at night. There's no day cases. Like, it never happens during the day. So people like try to associate these cases with normal drownings, but these are not somebody goes off and says, hey, I'll see you guys later. I'm going to go for a swim or a midnight swim or something like that. These are people who literally disappear off the face of the earth and then they're later found in water.
Yeah. And we've had some cases in Minnesota, and Blue, who is one of my co-hosts, she lives in around Austin, Texas, where I think there was a rash of them last year. Was it this year,
It's
William?
been in the last 2 years. It's been a rash. They actually just found another body today. And they're, unfortunately, in my opinion, and I think the facts show this, they're covering it up. They actually blamed one death on a supposed heart attack and then a gunshot. But this man was only 25 years old. So I think that I think actually I've come to the conclusion, I didn't understand this before, but I think that this is associated with corruption in these urban areas, that they're deliberately covering them up and not reporting them. And I think that there's something very dark going on, a very dark pattern. And so if you're in one of these urban kind of blue cities, be very careful, because I think that there's real police corruption, and corruption with the medical examiners as well. They're not telling the public the totality of the circumstances of these cases.
Yep, I would agree with that. So Blue had a question. So Blue, go ahead.
Well, I was actually going to ask if he was interested in looking into the Austin murders, because they are the suspects are all or the victims are also similar in the similar places, and we just don't have any. They're not even saying they're connected, like you said. I mean, it's
Right.
just ridiculous.
No, they're covering it up. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, from my opinion. I'm saying it very carefully, in my opinion, but they're definitely covering it up. And I've covered the cases many times on my podcast, William Ramsey Investigates. I've covered the cases, followed the cases, and I have a full separate chapter in my new book about the Austin cases. And I had to update it because there's so many recent events. But these are very suspicious, and I've categorized the names and the dates. And there's actually, what's interesting is this was kind of like a fringe investigative kind of thing, but this year they put out, there's been these very prominent YouTube personalities and really great documentaries. There was a guy who lives in Austin who put out a documentary about the cases and literally did some real investigative journalism. He got off his behind and went and talked to the families firsthand and recorded it, to his credit. I forgot his name right now, but he was kind of a paranormal investigator. But that one had like 500,000 views in the first week. So there's great interest. And there's a lot of Facebook pages with the Austin cases on them as well. And then there's another guy, people younger age might know this guy, but his name was Olvera. And he did the same thing. He actually went to Austin and interviewed people. And I think he did a great job. And he brought attention to it that the mainstream media certainly isn't. There's some other, I think it's Law and Justice channel on YouTube has followed some of these cases. But it really is incredible. And it's incredible to me as well, is that they're not warning people like, hey, it's dangerous to be outside. So it's another example of the political ruling kind of class dropping the ball, in my opinion, intentionally.
So and Christopher has a question. So after I ask you this, then I'm gonna go to Christopher and let him ask you a question. And audience, I'm gonna open up the floor after we're done interviewing William if anybody has any questions. So I'll let you know when you can request. If you do have a question while we're talking, please go ahead and put it in the purple pill, and one of my co-hosts will look at it and we'll ask that question while we're going through the interview. William, what is your opinion, your conclusion? Do you think these young men are being hunted?
Yes, I think certainly some are being hunted. I mean, I think a lot of them are definitely random, but I think there is a correlation between some of the more recent cases and these online dating apps. So, like for men, not really women, but I think Grindr and some of these others, there's definitely correlations between that. So I think that's very important, and I think that there's a type, like you talked. There's a definite type that they're after. I think that there's none of the victims are really obese, interestingly, or they're not of that size. So I think that there's definitely a selection process taking place. There's one prominent case that happened in Pittsburgh. His name was Dakota James, and I believe he was targeted through dating apps, and there was a test run on him, and then he was finally abducted and murdered, missing for 40 days. And when they found his body in the Ohio River, it looked like he had only been dead for 2 days. So where was he for the last, 4 or 5 weeks?
Well, they're holding them and torturing them and doing what Satanists do, which we'll get to in some of your other work coming up. But Christopher, meet William Ramsey, and you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if it's just a couple of quick questions. You mentioned, so my ears immediately perked up when you mentioned Chicago. So was Jesse Ross one of them?
Jesse Ross was a younger man who was at, I think, a UN conference in a hotel who walked out and disappeared. They never found his body, if I remember correctly. He was about 18 or 19. I did include him in my first documentary. Usually I have like the standard kind of people in this group, and there's probably people out of this. I know I've missed cases, but I didn't include him in some of the other stuff because they never found his body. But yeah, I mean, he definitely fits the profile of somebody who was wandering around at night and disappeared.
Okay, and so then the reason why that perked up for me was because you had mentioned Riley Strain. And what I found interesting when you mentioned that was because being from Kansas City, Jesse Ross was from Belton, Missouri, which there was a missing teen case that I worked on many years ago as a researcher for the family. And what I found interesting
was
there
from Springfield, right? Riley Strain's from Springfield and a student at the University of Missouri.
And Jesse Ross went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So they're both in the University of Missouri system. And so that's the reason why my ears perked up there, was because they're both not just from Missouri, but they both attended a University of Missouri school system, college system.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's multiple cases
Yep.
like that. There's people from all these universities. I think the correlation is really that this is the age when younger men are away from home. They're not going back to their parents' house. So they're more free and they do things. And I think men aren't as cautious as women, frankly. I think that they are much more prone to other things. They may not even think they're a target group. So I think that's the case with a lot of these cases. And I recommend men act like women, like protect your drink, stay out together, don't separate at night. These are all cases that happen at night. But
so do you see a trend like this with these other cases where there's similar universities that of these men that are found in bodies of water having similarities like that?
Yeah, tons. Boston's a full college town, so there's like 20 or 30 bodies there. There's Austin, but whether that this whole phenomenon is college-aged people. So to say that somebody's being targeted from specific colleges in different parts of the country, that would be incredible, really. If both Ross and Riley Strain, who left the state, were followed out of state and targeted, then we're experiencing something that's way beyond anybody's understanding.
Yeah, and after I watched your documentary on the smiley face killers, William, I had so many notes. I don't think I've ever taken as many notes. I kept stopping it because you profile the cases so well. And that's the thing. Maybe you should just give a quick profile because these, and also the geographical area, because there have been a couple in England also, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
very
So
active in
it's the
England. Yeah,
profile.
lots of deaths. I mean, I think it fits this profile of college age men, young, skinnier than average, athletic, intelligent, and it's a global phenomenon. My second documentary is the subtitle is "The Global Slaughter Continues" because it happens all over, and there's cases in the Netherlands, Germany, France, UK. I mean, these are the cases that I've actually followed. There's a lot of cases all over the UK, so I believe that this is somehow correlated with the internet, so communications, but also the fact that the internet might take a different story than the mass media would take about some of these cases. Like people would actually ask questions. But that's basically, I mean, the profile, to do an overall profile, young man out at night, probably drinking. There's a higher proportion of these victims that are homosexual and then disappearing, later to be found in water. I would say that's generally it.
Okay, so let me ask if you have found any connections between this killer, whoa, smiley face killer phenomenon. I want everyone to say that 3 times fast. And your book, Global Death Cult, talks about the Order of Nine Angles, the neo Nazi group Atomwaffen. These are very dark, satanic groups. 764 is it,
Yeah.
did you find a little bit of a connection between smiley face killers and the O9A?
It's a great question. I found ideological similarities. So I had somebody reach out to me who looked at my research, and his name is Igor Sarsky, and I include a chapter in my book. And I've done 3 interviews with him, which you can find on my podcast. But he reached out to me and said, "You know what the O9A is?" I didn't know. I'd read a lot of Crowley and things like that. But he said, "Hey, you got to check out this group because they believe in human sacrifice, and they believe in going out and selecting a victim, but making it look like an accident, right? So you're not supposed to get caught." And I couldn't believe it. So then I started reading the ONA material, and that's what led to the book Global Death Cult. And the reason I wrote Global Death Cult is because there were attacks and murders and deaths that are known to the police, arrests and trials that were associated with O9A murders all over the world, really. And there's this kind of, and it's still continuing. You mentioned 764. Believe it or not, I don't remember it existing when I wrote Global Death Cult in 2021. So it's still morphing and changing. And like you wrote in your title, accelerating, it really is accelerating into different
Okay.
groups. So
Right. Okay, so that led us right into accelerationism. I don't know if a lot of people are hearing that term yet, but you will. If you aren't noticing everything accelerating, there's an acceleration of terrorism. There's an acceleration of satanic cults who are a lot of times it's on the dark web, right? And they're recruiting young people, young girls. They're programming them. They're getting them to do awful things on webcams, and then they're going out and hunting them down, meeting with them and murdering them. I mean, please talk a little bit more about this because it's happening so fast, lightning speed. And I think that Igor and I've listened to your interviews with Igor, and I think there's a connection there too. I think that, and you can tell us what they call the sacrifices, and go ahead and go into global death cults a little bit now, William, if
yeah,
you would.
so the Order of Nine Angles is a fairly new group. So you had these kind of older orders, Masons, OTO, Temple of Set, Church of Satan. This group kind of started really underground um, in in the 80s. So it started pre-internet with just pamphlets being sent out through P.O. boxes, believe it or not. But it was a hybrid of occultism and far-right politics is really its intent. And then the internet came and this information kind of spread out and dispersed all over the world. And the guy's name who pretty much started it, it's pretty much agreed. His name is David Myatt, M-Y-A-T-T, high intellectual kind of guy, high IQ, but also part of the far right in the UK, who didn't have a lot of political success and not a lot of sympathy. And I think he tried to kind of disperse his ideas through these pamphlets that turned into books and then became interesting to a lot of disaffected young people. And part of his doctrines were that you had to select what he called an Opfer, which is a German word for sacrifice. And so you would go out at a certain level. He kind of devised his group differently than maybe other occult groups. He devised it on the tree of Wyrd, W-Y-R-D, and you had kind of 7 tiers. He called it the septenary way. But the 3rd or 4th level to get up of the septenary way is you literally kill somebody. So if somebody's seriously involved in the ONA, this is their doctrine. That's their ideology. It's very secretive, so it's not really known to me that whether, how many people this is happening to, but there have been cases of people just going out and killing random people and getting caught. There was a guy named Willem von Nudegem in Toronto who went out and went to a mosque and just killed some watchman there, random, didn't even know his name, stabbed him. He was caught on surveillance tape, and then they found that he had all this ONA material. He literally had an Order of 9 Angles altar with this specific kind of symbol, which you'll see on the cover of my book. And he's just one of many, and a lot of these ideas morphed into the modern right in the United States. Atomwaffen was a group that had international ties, and a lot of those members were absorbing Order of 9 Angles ideas. So this kind of Satanism was fused, and strangely enough, they really admired Charles Manson. So Manson's ideas, and they would go out to where Manson was out in the desert and take pictures and really dark stuff. And then Atomwaffen, some of the members died. There was a shooting of an Atomwaffen member. He took out this young man named Blaze Bernstein in Orange County, and he was found in a shallow grave in a park in Orange County, of all places. And that person was arrested and in jail. And then the founder of Atomwaffen, this guy and his girlfriend were caught on tape and arrested. They were arrested. I think they had encrypted communications, but they were arrested plotting to destroy the entire electrical grid of Baltimore. They were going to take down they're plotting to take down the entire electrical grid of Baltimore, which I think is 60 or 70% black now. So just incredible stuff has gone on. And whether there's a bigger connection, I've researched a lot of the O9A material and found smiley faces. Like, why are you guys having the smiley face? And if you really want to have a bad day, if you want to see kind of Order of 9 Angle ideology writ large in kind of a more visual way, go watch Ed Sheeran's video called Bad Habits. And it's actually about 4 minutes of all Order of 9 Angles ideology with the smiley faces. And that on YouTube alone, I mean, you want to talk about culture creation and acceleration, somebody as famous as Ed Sheeran, that song hit the #1 globally. And on YouTube alone, I think they're past the 500 million mark of views just on YouTube. So yeah, I don't really know who else sees these videos, but you want to talk about like this kind of non-conscious initiation of the masses. That's definitely what's taking place with that song, with that video and song.
What was the name of the song again?
Bad Habits. B-A-D.
Bad Habits.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Ed Sheeran has the yellow smiley face tattoo on his body too. So this is like this correlation. And it's interesting because I came at smiley face killers from a different angle. I didn't come at it as much. I was kind of somewhat liminally aware of it, but I came at it from a cultural thing because when I was studying and putting together my book Children of the Beast, I kept seeing this smiley face everywhere. I kept seeing it associated with Alan Moore and some of these hardcore acid kind of bands and around.
Okay.
And then I
Hold,
was like, does this have any meaning? And sure it does. Yeah.
okay, William. Okay. So Crowley and the smiley and the other thing you were researching for your book, Children of the Beast, and you
Right.
kept seeing smiley faces and Alan Moore. Can you tell us now what you believe, after all your research, is behind that smiley face emblem iconography?
Well, I think it's a kind of a sigil, and I think it represents kind of the Joker kind of motif, but also laughing in the face of tragedy. So it's almost like a mix of, like, you remember the old kind of smiling and sad pictures that associated with like theater or drama. It's almost kind of like that, and I think it has a deeper meaning within the occult, and it's part of the occult tradition now. There's just absolutely no question about it. And then it's been dispersed, and now it's on clothing everywhere. People wear hats with the smiley face symbol, but I don't think they have any idea that they're being initiated into very dark magic, and that this symbol has a esoteric meaning. So there's the esoteric for the kind of profane, but I think a lot of these people know exactly what that smiley face killing is, smiley face symbol, and that's why they leave it associated with these deaths, because I think it's a marker. I think it says they've marked that this is, instead of telling the public like, hey, we killed and got away with it, this is what I think the symbol represents.
So, back to school time, was about a month ago, and I'm in my local Walmart, and there is a round green and black smiley face rug. And I did take a picture of it and I was going to send it to you, but I thought, Dori, come on. He sees this stuff everywhere, probably in his sleep. But then a few weeks later, they found a smiley face on Mars. Now, it was kind of funny. So I sent that to William. But really, college, okay, kids are going off to college and you're buying them a smiley face rug. There's Hulu, and I did DM you this. Did you ever take a look at that show about the girls who ganged up that were in a foster home, and they actually did beat up and drown another young girl? And somebody wrote a book about it, and then Hulu, I think, picked it up. And in one scene where they're coming to tell these girls that this girl was found drowned, they cut to a pillow on the sofa. And
Wow.
what is it? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's intentional. And I think people are in the know. There's a very critical scene at the beginning of No Country for Old Men, if you remember that, where this kind of killer, Shigur, is flipping a coin, and this kind of hapless attendant at a gas station is talking to him. And behind him is the smiley face. And I think it's not a mistake. Like, these people know what it means. Like, the outsiders don't know, but the people on the inside know. That's why it's so redolent or prevalent in the common culture and in some of these films at really crucial moments. It's in Fight Club, right, from 1999. The smiley face is a very important aspect of it when they're like doing their Project Mayhem. So, and even like if you read the book, it's even worse, because the book ends with Tyler Durden, aka whatever, it's a 5 and a 6, which is another magical thing. But he shoots himself in the mouth and leaves a grinning smiley face, like a Joker, right? Yeah.
Wow.
So no,
And the
yeah, no.
first rule of Fight Club is there is no Fight Club. Wow. Does the smiley
So
face?
Fight Club
Yeah.
is a cult. It doesn't say it's a cult, but it is a cult. They talk about themselves in the book much more so as a monastery, right? And this is kind of like the cult of the O9A. Like, you're training. Like, if you read O9A, you're supposed to do all kinds of like physical exercise to stay strong, you know? I mean, you got to kind of read Global Death Cult to see what they're kind of putting together. But yeah,
Yes, you
no, it's
do need to
incredible.
read Global Death Cult, and I'm going to put some links in the nest up here for everyone so that they can go to your work. So
Here's the
go
thing,
ahead.
Dori. You can go to my Patreon and pay $5, and you can watch all 5 of my documentaries for free. So you can see the 2 Smiley Face Killers documentary. You can see Occult Hollywood, which I cover Fight Club in great detail. And you can just kind of see a lot of the stuff that I've been doing without ads. So you can just kind of like have ad-free listening too. So there's a lot of information there.
Perfect. That
William
is,
Ramsey Investigates Patreon.
yeah. Okay. And I will get some links in there. There's a fairly famous underground video, and I'm going to say allegedly, this is a recorded space. Um, there is a video, it's commonly known as frazzle drip, and I believe the two women involved carve a smiley face into a woman's,
Wow.
um, yeah. And I was watching BX's because I love BX too, and I know you've
Yeah.
interviewed her. Her work
Yeah.
is really good too, and I was watching her the other day. The MKU, the based on the Ukrainian Dnipro brothers, the murder cult Ukraine or something. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it shows the kind of power that the internet has for ideas to travel, good and bad, right? Like this is a good expression. We're sharing information and warning people, but the bad is that this O9A information and ideology has morphed and changed and been picked up all over the world. And there's little pieces of the O9A in almost like terror cells. They call them Nexians, and they're considered within the ONA to kind of be spiritual groups. They're almost like little mini cults, and they dispersed all over the world. Well, Russia has their own, believe it or not. And I was actually on one of the biggest Russian YouTube channels talking about Global Death Cult last month. I'll put a link to it on my social media. But they've had a problem with MKU and these variants of the O9A that have morphed and changed names, but still have the same ideology. But they're very abusive. They target kids. And I have to give credit to BX because she's done superb research on this and has done 4 recent documentaries. And they're at the attention of the Russians. They've arrested people. People have gone to jail. So it's really something else that it's gone all the way over there. And they've gone all the way to the Caucasus in, like you said, Ukraine. And they admire like the worst type of people. They're just, and there's a lot of abuse. So part of their element really is child abuse and underage abuse. And like 764 is on like a spinoff that has ONA ideas. But there was a guy in Texas, and his whole day, he spent all day abusing people online. But it's very sinister. So they don't do like, oh, you're on like a Discord server. They go to the most innocuous places like Fortnite or Roblox or something like that, and then get friendly with the kids and then ask them to go, hey, come over to my other thing, and then come over to my other thing. And then the abuse starts. And there was like stories of a guy who met some girl and went to, like, I mean, this is how terrifying for a parent, went to her house, camped out in the back of the house, and then lured the girl to his camp in the back of her house and abused her. Like in the way he went to jail. But like these are stories of people who got caught. So it's a very dangerous environment, especially in this concept of accelerationism. And that's kind of, it goes back into these kind of ideas, post-Nazi ideas, that the far right, the racist far right, wants to accelerate and make the world so terrible that they can take power. So they're accelerating problems, accelerating shootings. And one of the interesting things that I didn't know about this guy, Peyton Gendron, who drove to Buffalo and shot a lot of African Americans, is how deep he was into this online far-right community. And that he was associated with the O9A people, and somebody was trying to...
Sorry about that. I accidentally muted you. Could
Okay,
you
am I talking too much?
No, you're not talking too much. It was an accident.
That's okay.
I grabbed a notebook because now I have so many questions I have to write them down. And
Yeah,
I accidentally hit the mute button. Please
yeah.
continue. This is
You
great.
can, yeah, I would check out her BX's 4-part. I posted one of it I've had 2 interviews with her about her work, and she did a great interview on InfoWars recently, which I watched. But yeah, because she kind of picks up the more recent stuff, and she has a network of friends who are on these really dark corners of the web, like talking to people and figuring things out that I never really got into. Although I did go to Unicorn Riot and Kiwi Farms. There's a lot of really good research by other researchers on those message boards about what's going on. And I think the government's aware of it. I don't think they're as on the ball and on top of it as they should be. But it's a real concern for kids and young girls and stuff, like scarring and permanent damage and trauma and stuff. But like I was saying earlier, this one kid in Texas, that's how he spent his entire day, is just abusing people and blackmailing them and all kinds of stuff. He's like 17 or 18, like a young kid.
It's awful. There's a Panda Eyes cult or something group too, which is like really the things that you find. And William, can you talk about the furry phenomenon and how that might be a grooming tool? Because I think you might have some information on that.
I don't know as much. I mean, I do know what a furry is. Like, it's like when you dress up as like an animal or whatever,
Yeah.
or like a kink or something like that. But I don't know if I didn't, when I was researching the O9A within the context of the smiley face killers phenomenon. So I kind of didn't see the what's really a part is this like child abuse and abuse elements to it, which are real. But there's so many cases associated, and it's really a global phenomenon. These people are contacting each other. So I don't know much about the furries, but I did research recently. There was a conviction in Oxford in England, right, of a guy who was literally a smiley face killer. He was a transgender person. They never even said his real name in the court of law, which is to me astonishing. Like, it's unbelievable. But he went by his transgender name, Scarlett Blake. And there was a death in 2021, just as the kind of COVID restrictions were going down, of a young, well, it's 30 years old, I think, guy from Spain who was in England working for BMW, who was out late at night in downtown Oxford and was found in a pond that he should have been able to just pop right out of. And so it was a mysterious death. It was counted to be an accidental drowning, and that's what the police said. There was initial reports that he was with somebody else, and the police wanted to talk to that person. He was a person of interest in all black, wearing a mask. And the case kind of died until 2023, when somebody came to the Oxford police and said, hey, this person, I think my boyfriend or whatever, another transgender person from where? Austin, right? Austin, Texas, said to the UK police, this person has admitted that he killed Jose Carreño, and gave testimony, and they arrested this guy, Scarlett Blake, Asian American with who was at Tavistock Institute getting his, changing his pills to become from a man to a supposed woman, even though apparently he still had his male genitalia. But he killed a cat and cut it into little pieces, and then said, I wonder what it's like to do this to a person. And he literally went out with what they think a kill bag, and very calculatedly and cold-bloodedly found somebody who was drunk, who had been out drinking with his friends at 3 or 4, and literally like fulfilled every MO aspect of the smiley face killers. He found the guy in downtown, started chatting him up, lured him out away from the CCTV videos to a body of water, was with him, but they know that he was with him while he was alive for a half an hour or something outside of the CCTV, because his phone was still working. His phone was pinging. And then this guy Carreño was found dead in water. And they found out after, once they looked into the case, that this killer, this transgender killer, convicted killer, Scarlett Blake, went back to the scene of the crime when there was all kinds of flowers and candles, and like drank in the scene of the death that he had caused, like super creepy, and was online talking to people associated with the death who were asking questions. And he was online under different names, and just incredible, and communicating with people and traveling to the US. So this is like something involved with people traveling around. I mean, The police never followed up on this case and asked him if he was involved in any other crimes. They just arrested him on that, and that was it. And I don't even know what the guy's real name is. It's off the charts.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what I know about trans and furries because they are related. So I have a friend and he got a hold of me. It's been about a year. His 11-year-old daughter had gotten into a group online, and here's a couple of words that if anybody in here is a parent, and these people, okay, YouTube is full of dark grooming material that's age appropriate, right? Like your 11 or 12-year-old can get on here and look up this stuff, and it's early grooming. The one name that you want to be aware of is Therian. It's a god, but Therian. There's a group online. They target kids. It's furries. They're encouraging kids to believe that they can be an animal if they want. So this guy's daughter wanted a cattail, and his red flags went up. And he started looking at her history online, which parents should be monitoring. But see, these are websites that you wouldn't go, oh my gosh, she's on Discord, and no. And so there is a connection. And sadly, the furry thing is really when I first came back to Twitter a couple years ago, I was shocked at first. A Friday, there was a furry Friday, and people were posting pictures of themselves in their outfits and stuff. But anyway, the guy sent me all the materials from this Therion. Okay, so it's spelled Therion or something.
Do
He
you know what
sent,
that translates to?
tell me.
Beast.
Oh, of course. Good Lord,
That
William, I
was.
didn't.
Do you know what Crowley's name was that he wrote down? Was Toe Master Therion, the Master Beast, the Great Beast.
Oh, wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
I can send you a picture of him with that in writing. Toe Master Therion.
Wow. And did you know that when Crowley died, Kinsey, uh, I can't remember his first, Alfred, was hired by the Rockefellers, okay, to use a couple of specific pedophiles that they knew of. One was a Nazi, and I'm going to get to requests here pretty quick. Um, and one guy was a Nazi pedophile, and he's the one that gave Kinsey the Table 34. There's a 30-minute documentary. I don't even know. I can hardly handle watching it for 30 minutes. It's a discussion. It's professional psychologists, doctors, behaviorists, whatever, discussing Table 34 in Kinsey's work. Kinsey was funded by the Rockefellers, I believe, to specifically introduce that pedophilia was okay, that babies even liked it. Okay, it's so disgusting. I just found a website called Stop Kinsey because from the research that I've done, I believe that that was the inception of this thing. um, so the short documentary is called Table 34, and it is just about Table 34 in Kinsey's book. And the discussion is so nauseating, it's really hard to listen to. So pray up first, whatever. Make sure you're in a good space if you're going to listen to this, because this is very difficult material, everyone, but it's something we really need to be aware of because it's accelerating. So William, go ahead and talk about that a minute.
They're still teaching Kinsey as a credible source. He never divulged his research. He was into Crowley. He traveled to Crowley's magical Abbey of Thelema with Kenneth Anger. There's pictures of them together. He wanted Crowley's diaries, and his conclusions of his work and Crowley's conclusions of life are the same. That everybody can have sex with whatever they want without any limitation. It's incredible. So Kinsey was an operative. Like you said, he was financed by the Rockefellers to like $500,000 a year in those days, right? So this, those
Right.
just huge amounts of money, and just And I don't know if you've heard how he died, but yeah, it's bad.
You mean how Kinsey died?
Yeah.
Oh, please tell me.
Look up orchitis. That's how he.
Oh
I don't want to.
no. Okay. All right. I got you.
Well,
Um,
you can read about it in Children of the Beast, but I think it totally delegitimizes him as a credible source in any way, shape, or form. And Janet Reisman was really a great researcher. She's unfortunately passed away, but she really exposed him for the fraud he was. He was really an advent of the scientistical view of sexuality when a lot of the stuff is fake too. Like the natural kind of inclination of homosexuality is under 10%, but the way that Kinsey put it out there was like much higher. So he fudged his numbers, and yeah, and he was actually influential in promoting and being a basis for the homosexual movement, right? So the homosexuals said, "Oh, look,
yes.
Kinsey's a scientist. Therefore, all the stuff he said is true. Therefore, we can do whatever we want and we can promote this." So there's a direct tie between Crowley, Kinsey, and the founder of the homosexual movement, or like one of the great promoters of it, who became it, who was also you can't even believe this. It's in Children of the Beast, but the guy literally played the organ or the piano for OTO meetings with Jack Parsons. I mean, it's just such a small world. You cannot even believe this stuff. But it's
Al
all in Children of the Beast.
Anton, yeah, Children of the Beast. Get Williams' books. They're so good. Anton LaVey played organ for his parents' church when he was growing up. Weird. So we do have some hands, and Livid has been here for a while, but Trash popped in, and I know that he might be short on time. So Livid, if it's okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go to Trash, and then I'm gonna go to you, and then I think Dawn had a question. So let's go to Trash. Welcome, Trash.
Hey,
Thanks
thanks,
for
Dori.
coming.
Yeah, thanks. William, you and I actually have a mutual, a good friend of mine. I've been talking about accelerationism for a couple of years. I've been
Trash,
hosting.
it's BX. I think you missed our
Yeah,
discussion about her. Please lay it on us. We
well,
love
yeah, it's
her.
Becca. Yeah, for sure. So, like, no, like her and we're good friends, and I asked her about you because I hadn't come across. She was like, oh yeah, she was on your podcast quite a bit. We've been talking about accelerationism for a couple years. I'm newer to it. I think you've been around longer in that game, and then I think Becca has as well. Just me the last couple years, and so one of the things that people, when they hear this stuff, I just wanted to put out a reminder, and maybe William, you can back me up on this, or you have something more to add. When people are hearing this information for the first time, sometimes that old guilt feeling of satanic panic sets in, and that's kind of the point, in my opinion, of why a lot of this has been. And I don't think it's directly connected to something specific. I think, from what I can tell from all these different Telegram groups and 764 and 09A and MKY, that basically it's a smorgasbord of however we can capture somebody that's neurodivergent, maybe has some emotional problems, how we can capture them into some kind of movement and then groom them along with gore or extortion material, so on and so forth, to ultimately, commit mass casualty events, as we've illustrated just recently with the Tops grocery store incident, Butcher being arrested, he's still being held in Moldova. A lot of these arrests that are happening, that it is just designed to bring down the West. There's no political ideology attached to it, and when you separate neo-Nazism, or you separate Satanism or pedophilia or extortion or whatever, if you separate that from a political ideology, it starts to make more sense. And I just wanted to kind of bring that clarity to it for people that are maybe hearing this for the first time, because it's a lot to grasp. And when I've talked to people, maybe ex-federal agents, or talked to current federal agents, or I've talked to many other people about this stuff, they kind of recoil like, oh yeah, satanic panic. I'm like, well, yeah, I think that, like, low key, some groups, that's part of it. So you recoil and be like, nah, that's silly. But like, they're using Roblox, they're using Minecraft. It's not just YouTube or suggested videos. They're using any touch point that you have with a younger generation or person. And so, William, you came highly recommended when I asked Becca about you. Because Dori had DM'd me this space the other day, and I was like, "Well, hey, what do you know about William?" She's like, "Oh, good guy, great guy, been on his podcast before." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember seeing you." So this is the first time you and I have come across each other, but I happen to be one of the very few, specifically on the conservative side, I guess, of the political sphere, that's talking about accelerationism. Yet I think it's an existential thing that we all need to be talking about, especially if there's any parents in this room. That's why I talk about it a lot. So, William, nice to meet you. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Like, guys, remember when you're hearing this, that it's designed to make you recoil and say, oh, that's silly. That's crazy. You guys are conspiracy theorists. No, like there are arrests. There's documented cases through the DOJ or people getting arrested. Like Butcher went down. Kyle Spitz went down. All these people went down. And I hate to say it, that's just like a scratching the surface, but it's funny to watch them scurry around in their Telegram groups when these arrests happen because they freak out. So I just wanted to remind people that it's very real. It's not a satanic panic thing. It's not a conspiracy theory. You can go out and look at DOJ documents. It's definitely there. And the last thing I want to say is that, you know, I would encourage people, if you don't understand Operation Gladio, to go in and pay attention to what Operation Gladio was.
Oh, trash. There's a three-part. Actually, somebody combined it into one, but actually, the three separate parts are better. There's a BBC documentary on Operation Gladio. They're talking to the people who were involved back in the day, and so they're interviewing these Italian prime minister, former prime ministers, and these Spanish and France and Belgium. So it's all foreign. So it's all subtitled. So when something's subtitled and then I'm trying to take notes, it takes me a very long time to get through a three-part documentary. But I'll post that up to the nest too, because yes, Operation Gladio. I don't, like people thought MK Ultra was over, but it's not. Operation Gladio, I'm pretty sure still I mean, look at 911 and $1 trillion in cash disappearing. I'm sorry, but yes, everyone needs to really learn a little bit about Operation Gladio. So I'll put that in the purple pill while I call on Livid. She has a question. Hi, Liv. I adore you, dear.
Hi guys, how are you? William, I just have a question about what you think the connection is between like Nazism and the gay community and these killings, and also the fact that it seems like not only are these people being targeted as victims, but they're also being targeted to commit the crimes.
Well, that's a good question. I didn't see a lot of it would be neo-Nazism if there is a connection between kind of ONA post-World War II ideology in these crimes. But I don't think that somebody's being used to commit those crimes. I think it's a group. I think they're organized. I think they communicate through the dark web or through encryption. And they're carrying out kind of a asymmetrical type of warfare in a way. And I think that this is a form. I think that in some of these cases and some of these deaths, it's a form of accelerationism. They're going through the process of picking out an offer for specific reasons and maybe trying to take some of the smartest there's a higher proportion of Christians, overt Christians, taking them out of the life, really. So, I mean, if you read through the O9A literature, they have an antipathy or hatred, really, for Christianity, what they call Nazarenes. So that includes Jews and Christians. So they're really pagans, I would say. And so I think some of this may be people of that kind of ilk who are perpetrating these crimes. So I didn't see like overt. You don't see a lot of like swastikas. Maybe some of these earlier, most recent kind of abuse cases, but not in the kind of smiley face killings. Just the smiley face itself.
Excellent. Thank you. Christopher, go ahead.
So I haven't followed all of this by any means, like a lot of folks, but when you're talking about the neo-Nazis and there was a question about the gay community, one of the things that immediately came to mind was some of these school shootings who seem to have a similar background, some of which is tied to this transitioning transgender individuals. And then you combine that with some of the more, what I would argue, some of the more sadistic policies that we've seen in a long time from the far left. Are you seeing similar types of patterns and behavior from the far left as you are the extreme right?
It's a good question. Maybe this transgender killings, but they don't, I wouldn't say they overlap with the smiley face killings. I don't see that as much. I do see some of these people as really hostile to Christianity. They had somebody who may have been another killer. His name was Katunsky. It's a whole nother case, but it's out of Michigan. He took somebody and took him to his dungeon and basically, I mean, his name was Kevin Bacon. It's easy to remember. It's not the Kevin Bacon actor, but he ate a particular part of his body part. But he, so this guy was a Christ hater. He was involved in really dark underground of the internet, and he was kind of actually was a part of like a wolf pack, is what he thought. And he's an interesting guy, Katunsky, if you look him up. But I think he would be considered far left, I guess, because he's not Christian. And I don't know far right these days. Like, I don't know these terms. I don't know if they're really great terms. But it is interesting that this transsexual went into a Christian school and had a manifesto and killed a bunch of people in Nashville, Tennessee, like with the same kind of police force that covered the Riley Strain case and then just swept it under the rug and said, oh, he drowned. We expected to find him here in 14 days, even though we didn't find him with his cell phone, pants, boots, and we couldn't find his body in the slow-moving river, So, I mean, it's a total joke. Anybody who believes that police chief is, is credulous. So, I to answer your question, I don't know if there's really an overlap, like a political overlap. I think the political aspect is how the urban areas are handling these cases. When there's so many cases, they're just brushing it under the rug. It's almost like they're company towns.
Yeah, and I'm not even. I don't even know necessarily that I'm referencing the political side of it. As more as this Antifa anarchist far left, very violent movement that is coming out of the far left. It was something I was kind of curious about. And then the other question I had, and I know in the smiley face killers aspect, these folks are in the water, but in other patterning, are you seeing in some of these other groups? Are you seeing any other types of patterns when they find the bodies?
Those patterns. I see other patterns when they find the bodies. I mean, one of the patterns that they find the bodies is oftentimes the medical examiner doesn't see the damage or the injuries that took place that are not consistent with drowning. So, for example, they won't report some of the stuff. So, in a number of cases, they've gotten secondary autopsies or had a second look, and they find that these people are heavily injured. So Dakota James, for example, he had rope scars around his neck. That's not consistent with somebody drowning. One of these first cases, McNeil, clearly was put in the chair and blowtorched, but they never told the family until they got the autopsy. So I'd say those are consistent elements that there's a lack of transparency to the public about what may have happened to some of these bodies. There's another case in Minnesota, Minneapolis. His name was Chris Jenkins. They never disclosed to the family that he had a clump of hair in his hand. That's not who drowns and has a clump of hair in their hand. It's a joke. So they've had this guy, and they actually changed in that case of Chris Jenkins. His mother wrote a really good book about her son's disappearance and death. But the police actually, to their credit, changed the determination from accidental drowning to, I think, misadventure, or if not, homicide in that one case. So you kind of see this. That's definitely a pattern with these bodies, is that the medical examiner, and I think the police are incentivized just to call it a drowning and move forward. They don't want to look into these types of cases. They don't want to consider them murders. They're probably too hard to, I think there's a political element to everything these days, but they're probably too hard of cases to actually research, which I think is the purpose of throwing them in water, is that you're confusing people. You're confusing the police and you're getting away with murder, destroying evidence. So I think that's the consistency between all these cases that I've studied, is like a failure to look at all the evidence.
Hey, William.
Mhm.
I ran across something the other day doing some research again because of all the stuff that was going on in Springfield, Ohio with the Haitians and, their magical religious beliefs. And so I was doing some research and I did run across something And I'll send you the book that it's in because she's a very good author. But she writes about dark occult things. And in black magic, water is sort of an acceptable spiritual substitute for blood.
Wow.
And I found that really interesting. So I will send you that. And please, everyone, follow William Ramsey. I've put his site, William Ramsey Investigates, up in the nest because seriously, I've known him for 13 years and I had him on my podcast a lot more than just once.
Yeah.
And his work is really, really good. Okay, I'm going to go back to hands. Trash, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to follow up on Chris's question a little bit. This is something that I've been like just kind of taking a look at, just because like for political reasons, maybe a few years ago, I was paying attention to detransitioners, and I was trying to listen to why they were trans and then detransitioning. And one of the stories specifically stood out to me, and that was Helena Kirshner. And Helena Kirshner talked about this, where basically went through this grooming process on Tumblr, saying, I don't feel right in my body. I'm not really sure. Well, it'd be really awesome if you cut your hair short. Maybe you'll feel better. Maybe if you look more like a boy, if you cut your hair short, you look better. And so she did. And then, when that euphoria of the love bombing from the people on Tumblr that she founded a community in, when she didn't have community outside of the internet, the love bombing stopped, and saying, I'm not feeling so great about this. Well, maybe if you wore boys' clothes, you would actually start to feel better. And so she did that. And then love bombing like crazy. This was Tumblr. This is, I don't know, 2016, 2015, I think, is when Helena started transitioning, give or take. If I'm wrong there, it's close. And then, wow, love bomb. Oh my God, you look so amazing. You look so amazing. And then when that wore off, well, maybe if you took, you know, uh, you know, uh, puberty blockers or gender transitioning drugs, that you would feel better because you really are a boy inside a woman's body, and you would feel better, and blah 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 blah. And this was the grooming process that Helena Kirshner talks about, that she wasn't even aware of, that until she said it out loud, and people were like, "That's grooming. Like, I don't know what you're talking about." And so, like, I was like, okay, I can see how the grooming process works through social media. Now, okay, so now that I understand that framework, and I was looking at this Nashville shooter that you're talking about, that Chris referenced, that William brought up, and maybe it was an attack on Christianity. Maybe it was a more radicalized version of this type of grooming. And I don't know for sure. We won't know, because the only thing that was released to the public was a journal. And everyone called it a manifesto. It was not a manifesto, it was a journal. And it was a journal of scribbling. But there are hard drives. There's a massive amount of data, hard drives, electronic devices, so on and so forth, that have never been released to the public. And then they proposed that the journal that was released in pieces, that was quote unquote leaked to Steven Crowder's team through some sheriff in this office in Nashville, that it was leaked as the manifesto, when it actually isn't. It was just a journal, right? And there's some things in the journal that made me question. I have a screenshot of a couple things that I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? Like, wait, I want to explore what you're talking about. The internet's a very dark place. I want to see what that means. And it was released as a manifesto, and it wasn't. It was a journal entry. But in that, there is a part where it says the internet's a very dark place. I wouldn't recommend anyone to go. And so I've started to pay attention to more radicalized trans people in this vein. I have no way to attribute the Nashville shooter into anti-Christianity, or that I'm just going to kill a bunch of people because I was radicalized by, you know, uh, trans the trans community accelerationists. But I have questions, and we'll never get those answers, because the actual data, the actual hard drives and electronic devices, will never be released to the public. And there's no outcry for it, because people don't even know what the hell we're looking for on that. But I'm telling you, Chris, I don't think that was a bad question, because I think that people should be looking at it, because we're starting to see it again and again. There's now been 2 or 3 instances within the last year, I believe. And so obviously the right, they pounce on it. They're like, oh my God, look, trans activists are violent. These are violent people. Maybe, but if you understand the grooming process, and you understand, like, if they have found another avenue that's not just Satanism, pedophilia, or neo-Nazism, that it's something else, maybe. because the grooming process is the same as the grooming process for ISIS. It's the same as the grooming process for anything. So I would say that there's no answer, Chris, whether or not it's directly related, but I think you're asking the right questions, as people should be asking the right questions, because the circumstances seem to be specific and familiar to me. I don't know, William, I don't know what your take on that is, but because you're more of an expert than I am, but those are the questions that I have on it.
Go ahead, William, and respond, and then we'll
I
go to
think that
Livid.
there's a correlation between transgenderism and violence, in my opinion. I did a full show called Transition to Kill, which is a play on Dave McGowan's Program to Kill. So are these people being transitioned? Are they then inherently angry because of what happened to them? Are they confused, or the drugs they're taking, or whatever's going on? But there's been so many transgender shooters, not just the Scarlet Blake person I was talking about, or the person in Nashville, Philly shooter crossdresser, Perry shooter trans, Aberdeen shooter trans, Denver shooter trans, non-binary. So is this some kind of inherent confusion? And is even something more sinister than that? Is that these people knowingly are becoming trans, and that makes them violent? Like they're actually, it's a form of MK operant changing. It can get considered very darkly, and you can just do it through the internet. Some of these people who are love bombing, what if they are even more nefarious? And you've seen kind of that. You've seen this. I did a show on this trainer Harley Pasternak, who Kanye, we're going to put you back in the loony bin and give you more hard drugs if you don't shut up, right?
And Britney Spears.
And that one girl, she was this cute girl that all of a sudden wanted to become a man. How did that happen? Who's she in contact with? I forgot her name offhand, but she was anyway.
The one from Nickelodeon, right?
She cut off her, she cut off her mammary glands. It's gone.
Oh yeah, Elliot Page.
Elliot Page, yeah, Ellen Page. Thank you. So that was her trainer was Harley Pasternak. So what's going
former Canadian intelligence, FYI, before he became a health coach.
Right. So he has a very sus past, and he's associated with McGill, which I think had Ewan Cameron, and who else? Who else went to McGill? Who else went to McGill? Somebody very important went to McGill. It was what's that guy? He's always talking about trans and gender words. I see his face. Anyway, it says there's another important kind of psychologist out there who went to McGill.
Okay. Wow. That was a lot. Livid, go ahead.
Okay. Well, sorry. I couldn't unmute for a second there. I need to go back to the gay thing with the connection with the smiley
Livid, I
face
can't hear
lines.
you. Can anyone else hear Livid?
Testing.
I can, but there was probably a break in the chain. So
yeah, I can hear her, but you may want to drop her down and bring her right back up.
Liv,
Okay.
I'm going to drop you down, then just I'll bring you right back up. I'll send you a speaker request.
Okay.
Actually, if you could drop down to listener, then I will. Then you can re-request, because I'm not finding it right now. William, you mentioned the far right several times when we were talking about Atomwaffen, and I think it's really important that people understand that things, when we talk about things transitioning. Oh, who's that? Is that Liv? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Can you hear me? Just hang on one second.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, hold on. So this transition thing also happens sort of politically. So this far right group, right? And now we have far left things happening, but see, stuff switches around. It's really the same pool. It just goes back and forth, back and forth. Have you noticed that, William, in a pattern kind of a way?
Not too much, but I would just say that there are susceptible people for both of these ideologies, and the outcomes are terrible. So I would say that you're online, and you're somewhere on the spectrum, or you're vulnerable, or just like any other people who are vulnerable in cults in general, or coercive control. The internet is more efficient than running a cult, right? Because you have to have a building and a place or something. The internet's a perfect trolling ground for victims. So whether the outcomes, I don't believe in any of the. If you look at the empath documents by Schellenberger that he revealed, they're incredible. These doctors are monsters. They know they're shaping people's minds. They're not objective. There's a financial interest. They keep these people there. I would call them victims. They keep the victims from knowing negative outcomes from other people. They're deliberately processing these young, vulnerable kids into a cash cow of which they'll never return. So if they take these puberty blockers or cut off their body parts, they're done. And actually, the sexual functioning of these people is over. So they can't experience sexual functioning that humans have experienced since the beginning of time, since Adam and Eve, I guess. So these are monsters.
That's one of the goals.
Yeah.
And William,
Go ahead,
to the point that what you're making, there's not only that, but then there's this ideology, these lobbyist groups that have pushed. So I'm not trying to make this a political thing, but in Minnesota, for example, what was signed into law, California, New York, other states, it actually prohibits, it's actually against the law for otherwise ethical doctors to even probe these individuals as to trauma or other things that have happened in their past. They actually could lose their medical license for doing so.
Right.
Yes.
It's totally evil. A lot of these people with dysmorphia or feeling uncomfortable in their bodies, they like pop out of it. So, I mean,
it's like 93.
Who's had an easy ride through puberty?
But it's like a 93% recidivism rate. So like it's like 93%. Like once you go through puberty, that you change. Like the numbers are staggering. Like it's beyond staggering. But the money's really good for them, and so I just ask questions about that.
Thank you, Trash. I appreciate that. Let's get to Liv quick here because she had to drop. Go ahead, Liv.
Okay, you can hear me now, Dori?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to go back to the whole connection of the possibility of the smiley face victims being gay, only because it seems like they would be a vulnerable group, either gay or maybe interested in experimenting with being gay. Only because of the connection. Like if you look in the past, like radical religious figures would use drowning to kill the witches. So, I mean, there could very possibly be a connection there.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think there's an overproportion of younger gay males in the population of victims. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So, and a lot of them are vulnerable. A lot of them are free from their parents. They might be experiencing. There wasn't one in Corpus Christi. I don't think that he was publicly gay, but they found online that he was trying to meet up with men in a park at night. And then he disappeared and was found his body was found in a bin. I don't know what happened to him, but he was online doing this crazy stuff. I can't remember his name right now. He's in my book, but yeah, I think there's definitely a correlation. There's people online. I mean, I can just list off the names of people who are on Grindr. There's actually a Grindr serial killer. His name was Stephen Port. He was caught. He was arrested. He was tried. He was found guilty. And he had 4 known victims. And he kind of was like a smiley face killer without dumping bodies in water. He tricked the police into thinking these guys, his victims, either committed suicide or died accidentally from a drug overdose. And he just led the cops on. They never figured out what he was up to, and just until it was too late. It's actually interesting. Stephen Port in London, he got arrested because the family members were like, well, where's the CCTV video of my loved one? I want to see him. Like, where was he? Why aren't you showing with us? They actually had to get a court order. They got a court order for the CCTV video, and they saw their loved one walking down with another guy, and they said to the police, this is the guy who was with him when he was last seen. Who was that? And the police went, I don't know. He said, why don't you know? You have the CCTV. Well, isn't that your job? And so the actual families were the ones who got the truth and found the serial killer, not the London police. And I think the inquest on Stephen Port is still ongoing. They slow roll it in London. Like if I was a member of the public, I would be apoplectic, how lame and lazy and incompetent they are. But That's how bad it is.
Wow. So one of the things that I started doing a couple years ago, because one of them, I started running across them at first on Facebook, and now I see them once in a while on X as well. I call them regret blogs, and they are very heartbreaking. It's people that have had the bottom surgery and they're young, and now what William said earlier, their stuff doesn't work. They're unable to orgasm. They cannot experience sexual pleasure in any form anymore. And it's heartbreaking, and they're suicidal. And um, it's it's one of the reasons also that, I wanted to have a space like this, and I wanted to bring these things out because I love people, and they are being persuaded to do permanent things to themselves they can't reverse, and they regret them. So like I said, I call them regret blogs. You can find them. It's heartbreaking. Go ahead, Trash.
Yeah, and so like for people listening, let's bring it out at 30,000 feet. So like I'm sure there's a lot of people listening. Maybe they're commenting. Maybe they'll come up in the space. And so like let's bring it out to a 30,000 foot view, easy question to answer yourself. Accelerationists specifically, their goal, whatever faction it is, whatever umbrella term, whatever group they're connected to, the entire goal is for chaos to ensue, the downfall of the West, and when it burns to ashes, some kind of weird neo-fascism rises. So, like when you ask about Nazis, like I don't know, like go down the path, listen to what I'm telling you. This is their goals. These are their stated goals. This is the downfall of the West, and out of the ashes arises some kind of neo-fascist type governance, global governance or local governance, whatever it may be. And so when you ask the specific questions, are they connected with neo-Nazis? Are they connected with homosexuality, transgender stuff? Are they connected with pedophilia or Satanism or whatever? It doesn't really matter as long as you accelerate the downfall of the West. And I would ask you, the question that I would ask you is, would you do anything different if you wanted the West to fall? Would you introduce basically drive through mastectomies? Would you issue drive through neo vagina surgery? Would you issue drive through school shootings? Would you do anything differently than what's being done? And I think the answer is, if those were my goals, the answer would be no. And therefore, whatever you're trying to attribute it to would be the same loosely tethered goal of that. And I don't think that a lot of people understand this. And so this is like one of the core things that really bother me about accelerationism. And no tech bros, I'm not talking about you guys. I know the accelerationist movement in the tech community it's very different. We're talking about militant accelerationism. We're talking about basically undoing and unfounding the entire moral framework that we've all agreed upon and existed under for forever in the West. Even if you hate like colonialism, neoliberalism, the liberal economic order, sure, I agree with you. I don't like that either. Post World War II. However, if you wanted to see the downfall of the West, would you do anything different than what's being pushed right now? And then I would ask you the second question: are there any global governments that would like to see that happen? I mean, I can name two off the top of my head right away. I mean, I can talk about Azov Battalion in Eastern Europe. I can talk about Iran. I can talk about China. And would they not want to see the hasten of the downfall of the West as my economies are failing and going under ash because of my failed policies within my own country? The answer is yes to that too. And would they not fund and actually push accelerationism through these groups? And if you could accelerate the downfall of the West, would you do anything differently? I don't think the answer is no. I mean, I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. You wouldn't do anything differently. And so, like, when you ask specifically about what about transgenders, what about neo Nazis, what about Satanism, what about this, what about that? I mean, all of that makes sense in this scheme of that being brought down. And that's where I'll leave on. William, I didn't mean to take your time away, but this is a topic that I've been talking about for a couple of years, and these are my thoughts on this. And I would say, if you have a direct, specific question on whether or not this is involved in accelerationism or whether or not this is involved in these networks, the answer is probably yes. If it has anything to do with the decline of birth rate, because every single transgender person is now being sterilized, right? We know that if they're taking those drugs. or they're actually having physical surgery so that you can't carry on a generation, and then you're implanting another generation that has a different thought. So that would obviously lead to a short-term and a long-term decline of the West and the moralic fabric that I think we all agreed upon and grew up on, that our Constitution was built on. So I think that's evident to me, and that seems to be most likely. You have very bad actors. You also have very unhinged people, and you have a combination of bad actors, unhinged people, and countries that are adversarial to the countries and to the West that would definitely fund something like this. So I mean, that's where I'm at on accelerationism. I'm going to keep
Thanks.
talking about it, but yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Trash. I appreciate that. Um, I'm going to be wrapping up the space here, but I would like to have some final comments, thoughts from William, and then I'm going to go to Blue and Christopher for some final thoughts. And then, William, you want to wrap up, kind of do a closing statement for me or
Sure.
something?
Dori, thanks for having this talk, and thanks for inviting me. It's great to talk with you again. It's been too long, but I really appreciate
Yes.
the time. And all of my work you can find on Amazon. My books or my websites. William Ramsey Investigates. My podcast is in the top 0.5% podcast in the world, the top 30,000, 15,000, something like that. So I get a lot of listens on a lot of different subjects, and a lot of the stuff that I talked about today, I've talked about on the podcast. I really started out as a guest, so I was a guest with Dori on Doors of Deception in 2011. It's hard to believe, but then I kind of flipped it 2018 and really got started during COVID. But so you can see a lot. I have 1,200 episodes, so people can check that out. And like all my videos are on Patreon. And you just pay $5 a month, and you can watch these documentaries on the Smiley Face Killers, occult Hollywood, and see the strange kind of overlap, this occultic overlap between these phenomenons and things like that. So accelerationism, Smiley Face Killers, occultism, and Hollywood. So it's there's a lot of information there, and I would recommend people check out my book because it really is a history of the research into the Smiley Face Killers with a bunch of different names that may have been overlooked or underemphasized. And a lot of these people's ideas have helped the understanding of this whole phenomenon, and hopefully it'll help other people kind of gel the reality of this threat to people in their minds. And I think it's very important because the government's not doing anything.
Right. And I just have to encourage everyone. I'm glad you mentioned Occult Hollywood. Your documentary, Occult Hollywood, is fantastic. You talk about Kenneth Anger, and, Bobby Bouzoulet was playing Lucifer. And did you know Bobby does art in prison? Yeah, he has a website. So, anyway, Blue, do you have any questions or thoughts or anything for William?
Yeah, I'm just kind of blown away at everything that you've talked about tonight, and how it's all connected because it did fire up the brain somehow in different ways that I didn't look at things before. So I really appreciate you taking time with us tonight, and I'm just gonna I'll go ahead and get the $5 a month because I need this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, after your tarantulas and snakes, and then finding I, so I told Blue, I said, "Oh man, you might want to look for some cursed objects from this bin." So she dug through where the snake and the tarantula, because they were all coming up in the same place, like it was an access point, right? I'm like, "You have an access point." And she said, "Oh my gosh, I have a desk there." I said, "Go through it, find anything this person might have given you, whatever." She did that. There were sticks, and I said, "Oh, mandrake." And then I dug up a picture of that for her. So yeah, I mean, a lot. I've been on Twitter for a couple years, but I've been in a bit of an odd place myself. I'm firing up Doors of Deception again now. Some of you understand why I'm DOD, the OG, because Doors of Deception was my podcast. That became my nickname, and I started it in 2010 and only did it for a couple of years because I did some other things. But I wanted to do it again because I meet a lot of people that have really valuable information. And what I want to do, what my goal is in spaces, is to bring people, the guests, and let them talk about their work and all of that, so that people have something to go on to research on, and that sort of thing. So anyway, so I told Blue some things to do, and she did, and I think we're pretty good now. So also, to anybody in the audience, if you have or are having a supernatural manifestation and it's troublesome and you want to ask questions about it, you certainly can DM me. My DMs are open, because I want to help people that are having, problems with things like that. Also, that's part of just kind of what I do on the side, and have ever since I, was a podcaster with Doors of Deception. Christopher, go ahead with your final questions, thoughts, whatever.
No, I thought it was a great space. I encourage everybody to pay the $5 and sign up with William's Patreon or whatnot to even just to get the access to his documentaries and the work that he's sharing. I want to thank Dori, and I encourage everybody to follow Dori and hit the bell on her handle there, and of course Canaries Blue for co-hosting. And thanks again, Dori.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you so much, Blue. These two people are amazing humans. Blue's an incredible researcher. Christopher is a great guy who you want in your spaces. He's lively, he's interesting. So I really appreciate that you guys agreed to co-host with me. William, it has been too long. I know we were going to do an interview it was over a year ago now, and you ended up tackling the video with Christine Morgan yourself, because I've been in a bad place kind of for a couple of years. I've been going through grief. My son died unexpectedly, my youngest son, 2.5 years ago. And I really believe in this third year now that I'm heading into the third holiday season. I really, looking back, and I have a therapist that I see because it's really important for me to move forward and to heal. I don't think I was actually grieving for the first year. I think I was still in shock. So I'm coming out of that now, and it feels really good. And I miss people like William. And so thank you, William, very much. And maybe we can go revisit that, because I think people are starting to get the picture, especially when it comes to non human intelligence, because Christine Morgan talks about how they um, raise the energy and bring those non-human intelligences to their group, and then somebody steps up as a medium. And so I want to also say that if you haven't seen Three Body Problem on Netflix, I know the first 20 minutes is tough. It's subtitled, it's in Chinese. It's very good. And it's almost a documentary at this point. They even have what they call the meditators at the UN, William, which would be the
Wow.
same as the mediums that, yes, Christine Morgan with Lucis Trust is
Right.
communicating with. It's wild. So we probably should, hook up again and do something.
For sure. For sure. Anytime. Anytime. It's great to
Thank
talk.
you.
Thanks so much for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, William. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time very much. I know it's valuable. Thank you to everyone that came tonight. I see so many awesome people in here. Thanks for the people that came up and asked questions. Be vigilant. Be vigilant with your children. Keep your eyes open. Maybe the old one eye has been replaced by the smiley face. I don't know. But thanks a lot, and everyone have a great night. Goodbye.
Take care.